What is interesting about Montessori is that it is over 100 years old. And still, her pedagogy remains relevant today. She had her view on children's development, but it is really her interest in how children learn and the learning tools that she has developed that has made the Montessori approach international way of learning in the early years, even though it stretches beyond the early years. So here we are. Here are two boys playing in a Montessori environment. And if you are ever tempted to open any of the Montessori textbooks, which are written in quite an archaic language, she talks a great deal about the children working. And the reason why she talks about the children working, because for her, the play was the child's work. And for her, it was through play that the child was learning about being an adult. So it very much resonates with what David has said, that children in their play usually pretend to be adults, or they reenact scenarios which they have seen adults doing. We are all familiar with mummies and daddies, or doctors, or firemen, all these kind of usual play scenarios that we see in the settings. And I think what makes Montessori interesting today, that some of the ideas about self-regulation, about the importance of the child's autonomy, about the child's initiative, which we have witnessed through developmental theory of the 20th century, were all written about in the beginning of the 20th century. So they have come alive through developmental psychology that we know today. She was an interesting person. She was one of the first women to train as a doctor in Italy at the end of the 19th century. She was so interested in the way how children learn, having worked with children with special educational needs, that she went to study educational anthropology. And she was a real campaigner for women's rights. From the very first setting that she opened in Rome in 1907, she believed that she wanted to provide provision for working mothers. She wanted the children to be saved, and she wanted the families to learn about children and how they learn by having very close connection with the families of the children that attended the school. It is also important to say that the first Montessori school started in a very, very deprived area of Rome. It only through circumstances that it has developed into something that is today considered to be for privileged children. And we are really trying very hard to demonstrate that Montessori has got real value for children who don't have so much. She also, very soon after she has set up the first nursery school, it created huge amount of interest, not only in Italy, but also in around the world. And so very quickly, she became a trainer of Montessori teachers. And this is one of the reasons why Montessori is an international approach. There are Montessori schools in virtually every country of the world, and they provide a diverse approach to education for young children. In her work, she was very much a product of the 20th century, so she witnessed the impact of the First World War. She was in Spain during the time when the Civil War started. She was in India when the Second World War started. So for her, the idea that the child was the herald of peace was really fundamental, and she saw the child as an agent of social change, and she campaigned for peace. She said that education, that peace was really the role of education. We cannot create a peaceful world unless we educate children towards this idea. And I think in this context, her work today is as relevant as it was 100 years ago. We need to ensure that children understand diversity, they are respectful towards each other, that they are able to use positive social relationships towards changing of the world. And her approach to working with the children was very much to create a global learning community. She felt that children needed to be citizens of the world before or alongside being citizens of their country. And looking at the world today and looking how connected we are, looking at our opportunities to travel from one end of the world to another within 36 hours really makes this idea, this notion of children being citizens of the world very fundamental to the idea of creating world peace. For her, the relationship between the child, the learning environment, and the adult in the environment was fundamental. Those of you who are familiar with the earliest foundation stage will recognize this relationship, because the earliest foundation stage looks at the child as a unique individual. It looks at the enabling environment and the positive relationships within the environment which provide optimum opportunities for learning and development. So in all from the Montessori perspective, we are always looking at how the environment provides for the child and how can the adult facilitate it. So once again, it resonates with some of the things that David has said, that the adult is a fundamental to the children's learning opportunities. Like all other earliest practitioners, we are looking at the relevance of the Montessori approach in what we know about neuroscience today, and for us, the importance of first-hand opportunities in developing the children's senses and establishing conceptual understanding of the environment are very important. Montessori talked about the child having sensitive periods, and it is the knowledge of the sensitive periods that the Montessori practitioner uses in order to tailor the learning environment to support play activities, to support their learning and development. We also understand the importance of communication in children's learning, the importance of social interactions, and above all, the importance of emotional well-being. If the child doesn't feel good in your setting, if they don't settle well, they will never learn. So it is really our main role to help them to settle, to feel comfortable, to feel welcome, to have a sense of belonging, in order to have the conditions in which to be able to play and learn as they go forward in their life. Montessori believed that children developed in stages. This kind of division of developing in stages from birth to 6, 6 to 12, 12 to 18 will resonate with those of you who know anything about the work of Piaget. But she was one of the first people who said that the learning at this stage of the child's development from birth to 6 was the most important. It was more important than going to university, because all the foundations for learning, all the learning dispositions are being developed at this particular stage. And she also talked about the importance of the sensitive periods, and whilst some of them are very familiar to things like sensitive period for movement, sensitive period for language, it is when the child learns to move and use fine and gross motor skills, when they develop language, so that they communicate their ideas, and when they learn to be social beings. Those are very familiar to all earliest practitioners. But the sensitive period for order is extremely unique to Montessori, and it links with the children's unique need for routines in babyhood and toddlerhood. And by routine, I don't mean that they have to be fed on the dot of 6 and then on the dot of 10, but by that I mean the children become familiar with the routines of their daily life. They know the signs of being fed, they know the signs of having baths, they know the signs of going to bed. It is these routines that give them a notion of predictability and give them element of control, because they can recognize it as something that is going to happen. And that kind of sense of security is really, really important in the early stages of their life. As they grow older, the order of the external environment becomes extremely important. And for us, an orderly environment is really, really important to facilitate the children's capacity to make choices about what to play with, where to play with it, and how to do it. And you probably have all seen this idea of the need that toddlers and young children have for order, because they will often put things back where they have found them. So if they know that the shampoo is kept in a certain place in the bathroom, they will always look for it in that place, and they will quite automatically put it back into that place if there is that capacity or opportunity to do that. Montessori also talked about the children being interested in small objects, and those of you who have taken toddlers for walks will know that they will spot the tiniest little thing on the path. They will be fascinated by pebbles, they will be fascinated by little plants. My little granddaughter, who started to walk 3 weeks ago, now thinks that she can walk anywhere, and she is a walker for world. And when I took her for a walk on Monday, she stopped by every plant on her way, and she smelt it, because from the time she was 6 months old, I have always told her that flowers smell, and I have always let them smell them. And of course, as a granny, I was absolutely in seventh heaven that she has taken this on board. But I was amazed that she was able to notice the little plants on her path. As my daughter said, there were probably lots of dog pee on those flowers. And I said, well, that's all right. She is learning all about it. Montessori also talked about the child being in a sensitive period for refinement of the senses. So that play with objects, which is so typical of babies and toddlers, then has an opportunity to develop into more systematic play when the children begin to sort and match. And that is really at the heart of the foundation of the Montessori approach, the sensorial activities that we offer to the children. So children will often be given sets of things to match together or grade or sort in a certain way. And for Montessori, that was the foundation for the children's mathematical thinking. She felt that the capacity to classify was an essential tool for being able to do more, to demonstrate more cognitive skills later on. She believed passionately that the child was an active learner, and the Montessori environment will have an area which is not in any other early years environment that I know of, and that is an area which we call activities of everyday living or practical life activities. And in that area, the children kind of learn to use everyday tools, so they play with in transferring or sorting activities. But all these activities not only support their symbolic play, because they often pretend they are making food for their babies or for their dollies, but also they refine their fine motor skills. And those fine motor skills are then again used in more refined manipulation of objects, but also in, for example, as a very relevant preparation for writing for the children. Those of you who are familiar with Montessori will know that we have quite well-developed opportunities for children to learn how to read, how to write, how to compute, and how to play with shapes. But it is really important to stress that those opportunities should only be made available to the children when they show interest. For Montessori, it was really fundamental that once you have prepared the learning environment, children engage with it in a spontaneous way. So you don't push them to do, you don't expect them to do things. It is possible to be in a Montessori learning environment where 26 children will be doing all sorts of different things. Some of them will be doing those transferring activities. Some of them will be outside. Some of them will play with construction. Some of them will be in the book area. So the learning is very much individualized, looking at the uniqueness of each child, ensuring that the environment provides those unique learning opportunities for the children. So I just wanted to share with you one of these environments to give you an idea how we organize them. Everything in the classroom is available on open shelves, and it's very visible to the child what it is. So we don't put things in baskets. We would put them on a tray so that the child can see what is available, so that when they walk around the classroom, they can make an informed choice. They don't have to tip something out in order to find what it is that they want to play with. And that capacity to make informed choices encourages their independence, not only physical independence in accessing the activities, but also cognitive independence. They can choose what they want to play with. And Montessori believed that they will choose the right thing, that spontaneously they will know what is right for them and what is not right for them. And those of you who work with babies, and if you use treasure baskets, do any of you use treasure baskets in your work with babies? It's a basket of objects, and what is so fascinating, that the baby will choose different objects according to what the baby needs, not what you offer them. So when I made the treasure basket for our granddaughter, she has had it for the last 8 months. Last week she found an object in the basket which she never explored before. And it was an old perfume bottle which she could open and close. Now, she wouldn't have been ready for it 6 months ago, because 6 months ago she wanted things that she could put in her mouth. But now she wants to see how things belong, how they work, how they fit together. So suddenly the bottle had appeal for her. And I was it's so fascinating to watch some of Montessori's ideas emerge through the eyes of my granddaughter. It's very different to having seen it with my own children, because one, as a parent, one gets too preoccupied with lots of things. Whereas as a grandparent, you can just indulge. And it's a gift to me. Anyway, looking at how we prepare the environment, this is the one area which I think is possible for you to think about, and think about how you could change the learning environment for your children to make it more accessible, to offer them that opportunity for continuous provision, to offer them opportunities to tell you what they really like, because I'm sure you are aware that in your classrooms there are children who are natural builders, there are the artists, there are the mummies and daddies who will always be in the role play area, and there are also those children who love books and express themselves in that way, and there are also the passive learners who walk around watching what's going on without actually touching very much, but working it all out in their heads. So for those children, it is really important that we provide an environment which satisfies all those different types of learners in our settings. So these are some of the principles that we apply in the classroom. And I know that children's play can be very chaotic, and but I think that it is really important that it grows of something that is well organized, so that they can take maximum advantage of the activities that are on offer, so that they can use them in a symbolic way, because they know exactly what is there to be used, and they then create the opportunity to make it their own. I think that with the emergence, or with our growing awareness of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, we have been much, much more mindful of the voice of the child. And I think that this type of environment gives the child a voice without actually having to speak, because the child is able to express their needs and desires through the choices that they make. And it enables you as the practitioner to get to know the child for what they love, what they are good at. And also it highlights perhaps possible activities that you will need to plan in order to enhance their holistic development. As Cassie said, I'm very interested in introducing Montessori to all sorts of environments, and we have worked with several primary schools introducing Montessori into nursery and reception classes. And this is what the learning environment would look like in a state primary school in East London, where the teachers, as they have learned about the Montessori method, have modified the shelves to be able to give children learning opportunities. So everything is on a tray or presented in such a way so that the child can choose what they want to do, and it will enhance the group lessons that the teacher might give to the children. And again, providing opportunities for different types of learners without having to single out the able group, the middle group, the less able group, because the children will naturally choose an activity which is appropriate to their level of development, or will be introduced to more challenging activities because their friends play with it, and therefore it will be much more appealing to them to engage with the activity rather than having to be introduced to it by the adult. But like David said, the best way for the Montessori teacher to introduce children to a new activity is for her to do it by herself. So she plays, the children come and say, what is it you are doing? And that gives you an opportunity to start presenting a new piece of material to 1 or 2 or 3 children. I think that thinking about the role of the Montessori teacher, she had really quite specific ideas what the teacher should be like. And it is because she was a product of Victorian education. She was a product of education where all children sat on benches. They had to keep their hands in their laps or behind their backs, and they learned in a totally passive way. So for her, the teacher needed to really know children's development. She needed to be interested in the children's unique interests, and through those interests also identify the potential needs that the children would need to develop and plan the learning environment. She believed that the teacher was the custodian of the environment, so we prepare it for the children, and how much the adults care for the children will be very much reflected in the quality of the preparation of the learning environment. So, for example, we would always put little bunches of flowers on the table to show the children that we value them and that we want them to be to enjoy nature alongside the activities that are in the classroom. we will make sure that only complete and full sets of activities are on offer. So a puzzle with one lost piece will be taken off the shelf, because if the piece is lost, the child cannot achieve satisfaction from doing the activity on his or her own. And she also talked about the fact that the adult needed to have respect for the children, and that the adult needed to trust the child's capacity to take from the environment what they needed. And in order to be able to do that, the adult need to be really a reflective practitioner, because it is so easy for us to get excited about what the children are doing and step in very quickly and disturb their level of concentration, disturb their focus on the activity. So being aware of oneself in relation to the children, being humble enough to allow the children to teach you something whilst they are learning from you, is really fundamental to the role of the Montessori teacher. In that approach, it really shows the respect for the child as an equal partner in the learning process. And I suppose, having been brought up in the Czech Republic under the communist regime, for me, that respect for the child has been one of the things that have attracted me to the Montessori approach, because suddenly I saw the child in a totally different way to the way how I was brought up. And I think to this day, it attracts lots of people to learn more about Montessori because of that reason. I think the respect for the child, for the environment, and also for oneself. I think it's really difficult to be a good early years practitioner if you don't believe in your self-worth. And we are undervalued and often unappreciated by the wider learning community. But I think it's really important for you to understand, exactly as David said, that your role is fundamental to the development of the child. They will establish foundations for learning for later on. In the Montessori environment, we always try not to do something for the child if the child can do it for themselves, in exactly the same way as the teacher with the jacket, what in David's slide. We give the children time to do things for themselves, and that makes them feel really good about themselves, because being able to put on your jacket and your shoes, ready to go out into the garden when I want to go out, if this classroom has got that free flow, is a amazing gift that you are giving to the children. If we always do it for them at the time when they want to do it on their own, by the time they are 5 or 6, you have already corrupted them. They will expect it to happen for themselves. So you will have these children who come to school who will be doing this, expecting you to put their shoes on. We try to discourage that kind of approach, and we really encourage parents to encourage the children to be independent in the home, because that nurtures their sense of self. As I said in the beginning, Montessori is known for her pedagogy. She's known for the tools that she uses to help children learn. So, for example, we introduce the children to the whole world first. We always start with 3-dimensional objects. So we would start with the globe before we look at the puzzle map of the world and do other activities with it. We also make sure that the children have freedom to choose, but the freedom is there with responsibility. So if the child chooses something from the shelf, they absolutely have to put it back. And it is a very, very simple requirement, which really guides the child positively towards self-regulation. Very quickly they remember that things need to be put back, but of course they need to be reminded initially. You need to model what is expected of them. And the reason why we invite them to put things back, or we ask them to put things back, is not because it's convenient for you, it is because it is really good for the other children. The activity is then ready for another child to use. So social element is always linked to the responsibility that comes with it. We also have something called work cycle, which is the opportunity for continuous play, very much providing conditions as described, for example, by Tina Bruce in the characteristics of free flow play, where the children are able to engage in activities for as long or as little time as they need to do that. And in Montessori environments abroad, where children don't go to school until the age of 6, they will be in family groups. So the 3 to 6-year-olds would be together. And I'm still campaigning for children to be really having access to the earliest foundation stage until the age of 7, because that opportunity to learn through play would set them up really, really well. And I see how beneficial the opportunity of working with older children is for the 3-year-olds. They learn from each other. That ZPD that David talked about can be provided by adults, but also by more able peers, and it works really, really well in the Montessori learning environment. We use a lot of opportunities for color coding. So for the older children who have learned to read at the age of 6 or 7, we introduce activities to help them to structure language, structure a sentence. Each part of speech is represented by different color. So whenever they are making a sentence with the help of an object, so we have got a little rabbit hutch, we have got a rabbit there, the child reads the sentence, changes the prepositions, and then manipulates the rabbit to be either inside the house or on top of the house, or on top of the hutch or next to the hutch. So giving reading opportunities, but also learning very indirectly about grammar, which is important. As the children go from the Montessori settings in England into reception class, because the majority of them, even though they are in private provision up to the age of 4, will enter reception soon after their 4th birthday. We feel that what they are bringing with them is not school readiness, but it's really readiness for life as a whole. They bring independence. They are able to do things for themselves, make decisions, and learn how to operate in the emotional environment. They also bring curiosity, because the freedom to choose has sparked their interests, enabled them to get involved and engaged in activities, and the continuous engagement with the environment also facilitates opportunities for critical thinking, problem solving, without very much interruption. So the capacity to concentrate is very, very important in the Montessori environment, and the children bring it with them. They have got capacity to play on their own with others if they need to, and that freedom with responsibility also enables them to control their impulsive behavior. So if a teacher asks them to do something, they will be more likely to self-regulate than they would be if they didn't have that freedom with choice. And here's just an example how a child uses a piece of Montessori material which we use to teach counting from 1 to 10, but in fact, if the child is capable of the counting which they have started with the teacher, they can then use the materials in a different context. So here the boys together are measuring their plants and using the number rods to do it. And that really is what Montessori intended when she designed the activities. She designed them to give the children a start, but to then have the freedom and opportunity to use the activities in a creative way to demonstrate what they have learned from them. And it really informs the teacher about the child's real understanding of 1, 2, 3, 4 means. And I think that if you are thinking about working with parents and how Montessori environments prepare or support parents, it is important to understand that we encourage parents to help the children to be independent, not to do things for them. So not to feed the toddlers, but give the toddlers opportunity to feed themselves. Not to put their shoes on, give them time to do it on their own. And again, referring to my granddaughter at 15 months, she got her first pair of shoes. 3 weeks later, she is practicing. She's trying to put them on. She's trying to work out how it works. It will be a long journey before she does it on her own. But what really matters is her interest in wanting to do it. She's demonstrating that she is interested, which is a message for me as an adult. Give her time. Give her a little bit of help. Show her how to do it. And one day, very soon, she will be able to do it on her own. I also think that it is in the home environment, giving children, setting it up in such a way so that the children can make choices for themselves. Which book do I want? Which toy do I want to play with? All of this is possible these days. Children are so privileged to have their own space where to play, where to learn, and organizing it for them is really a huge help to towards their autonomy. And finally, I really don't think it is the role of parents to duplicate what is happening in a nursery school. I think it is really important that children do different things in the home and that they do activities with their parents. They go to parks, they go to museums, they play together rather than having to focus on the phonic sounds in their names. What can you do in your settings? These are some tips that you could think about if you were tempted to know a little bit more or you wanted to try some of the ideas that I have suggested today. I'm sure that the children would benefit from it. Here is just a nice example of a little girl having everything ready for her so that she can really focus on what she's doing. So you get a high level of engagement, high level of concentration as she's practicing, if she's making her little pattern. And again, something to think about for you as you go away. What is it that you would like the children in your settings to develop? What skills do you want them to have? What do you understand by school readiness, which is such a prominent phrase in the EYFS? And I think it's so pernicious because it can make us think about the literacy and numeracy without understanding the whole child. And I think it is through play we will help to develop the whole child and really fundamentally reflecting on what the role of childhood is. You know, it should be considered, children only have one childhood. It's when they are in the nursery, it is probably the only time when they should have an opportunity to engage in spontaneous play without being directed too much, because once they go to schools, the expectations will be very different. But if they have that freedom in the early stages, they will also come to understand much more when it is time to do things that are expected of them. So, there are some tips for you to, if you wanted to read a little bit more, and if you are more interested in Montessori there is our website will provide you with more information. Thank you very much.